when I think of the day they come and took me away.
We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments and governments that have inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians. We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country.
I had 4 of my girls ripped out of my arms, nothing, not even an opportunity to even talk to anybody. The police just come in like I was a dog and chucked me in the van. I've got scars over my body and scars in my heart and scars in my soul from what they did to my daughters and me. And I want my kids back. I want my kids back. They did it to my dad, they did it to my mum, they did it to my nan, they did it to me, and now they've done it to my kids. They're killing our future.
I was taken away when I was 4 years old. My grandparents were taken away. My mother's generation was taken away, and then I was taken away. Because I had fair skin, they classed me as a quarter caste Aboriginal, and so therefore I was taken to Sister Kate's first, and then I was fostered out to a non-Aboriginal family. Didn't even know where my family was or who they were. And so when I was about 12 years old, I started asking these questions. Where's my mum? Where's my family?
You know, the most basic form of socialisation for any human being, no matter who you are, is the family. That bond between mum and bub, or the father and the bub, that is the very first point of socialisation for any human being. And when you mess with that, you're messing with that person. So we actually learn our place within families, so who you're related to, where your country's from, and that's the most important thing for you as an Aboriginal person. It's not about what job you do, how much you earn or whatever. It's actually about who's your mob. Are you related to such and such? And then people have a conversation, and that makes you an Aboriginal person.
The placement really broke down because I became really rebellious and real angry that I didn't know who I was. I was an Aboriginal kid growing up in a white family. And so therefore they put me back into the welfare system. And I sort of just drifted around from placements to placements.
Seeing the children out there that they go through, you know, some of them 20 or 30 homes a year, especially the older children. So there's a lot of anger, a lot of rebellion, and a lot of resentment as well that nobody cares for them.
My family were all in Port Hedland, so I hitchhiked up to Port Hedland and met with my family. Just basically spent the next few years getting to know my people, which was really, it was good, but it was difficult because I didn't really have those attachments throughout the growing up years. You know, I had to really learn how to reconnect with them. I had to learn where our family came from. I had to learn my mother's journey, my grandparents' journeys. And so once I'd really connected and fitted in with my Aboriginal family, I came back to Perth. I was just belonged somewhere. So when I came back to Perth, I started fostering as well, because all throughout my growing up years I thought I'd be a good foster carer, because I'd been to some families that weren't so good. I solely bought this house for the purpose of fostering, because I had about 8 kids then. They get scared of being by themselves, and so I usually put them in the room with the other kids as well. Well, they all sleep in the lounge room. Officially, DCP bring over respite children who need just a break from their foster carers, but the regulars come on their own accord. When they first come here, they are quiet. They don't even know me, unless they've been foster kids of mine.
I help Anne out with her boys, because sometimes we can have up to 11 children here on the weekend.
I've been fostering for about 30 years now. I fostered general children in the beginning, so other people's children. Then I became a foster carer for my own grandchildren, because my grandchildren were taken into care. How many children I've grown up? It would be easy 30, 40 kids, if not more.
And Pop
Glenn was the one that came to me when he was a couple of months old. They said he had severe fetal alcohol syndrome, so they didn't actually believe that he was going to live very long, and they just wanted him to pass away with family. The strong attachment to us and his family connections and the love we gave him, he did pull through.
Yeah, so I've been with Mum since, these 23 years now? Yeah. So yeah, all these years I've been here, like, yeah, if it wasn't her, I wouldn't be here, I admit. So like, yeah, I'm very thankful for her.
You know, they said at first he wouldn't walk or talk. He can do that now. It's been a really long journey for him, but he's lived and he survived and he knows who all his family are.
You learn more about yourself with the kids too. You learn how to be a better uncle, and that's like near first girl, I might be a good dad one day. Yeah.
I've known Anne and Daryl for about 30 odd years. Anne has fostered many children. Also, my children she's fostered and helped me to get a house and get settled and teach me how to be a parent to my 2 children.
Kinship Connections, as Anne explained it to me, is a program where we reconnect kids with their birth families and ensure that they are aware of their culture and their identity.
And picked a board of strong people who believed in the cause and what we were doing.
Well, it's very important for Aboriginal children to be placed with their families, and if they're not placed back with their families, and if they're in long-term placements, that they get to know who they are.
If you know who you are and where you belong and who you're connected to, it helps you become very strong and not, as we say, get lost along the way.
The books that are developed and that Anne has really put so much energy and time into are critical to a child's sense of self.
And because we was going out to family and we're hearing all these stories of the family, all these photos are bringing out and showing us this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, it's just like gold. You know, we couldn't keep that to ourselves. And so therefore we accumulated so much information and we put it in these books. We thought, we can't just have it sitting in a file, we've got to share it with these kids.
If the child is going back for reunification or whether the child is still seeing family, they've got something to take away for themselves. They've got photos, they've got the family history and so on to keep for themselves.
The books, I have seen kids hugging those books to themselves and seeing them as the most important and significant book in their lives.
We had a young fella who's about 5 years old, and he didn't know who his family was and his pops and his nans. But when we gave him a book, he was just so excited about his book. He hugged his book, he put it in his room, and the carer said every time, he was living with his nana. She said, you know what, every time he comes, into the lounge room and there's somebody new in the lounge room, he'll pull out his book and show him, that's my pop, that's my mum there, that's my nan, and he goes right through the book and tells everyone, black, blue, green or yellow, he tells them, this is my family. And so he's got it right in this book for him.
For me, the little boy that I looked after, and he was actually reunified with his mum, remembering, that it was domestic violence, he came back to me and he'd go to sleep, but he'd wake up having terrible nightmares and screaming and crying for his mum because it had brought back the memories. So to calm him down at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, I'd get his book out of his family. And this would pacify him. And he'd stop crying and he'd sit there and I just had to hold him and say, it's all right. And then I'd open the book and he'd relate to that book.
It's really important that we don't engender another generation of kids who become another level of stolen generation when in actual fact there are many Aboriginal families around who are more than willing to care for kids and ensure their futures.
Our people are just as loving as our children as any other human being, and often the fact that there's such high rates of removal means that our communities have lost the ability of actually having the joy, having a sense of what the future may be, simply because we're not given the right to raise our own children. When you have that sense of identity, people have no idea. It has such a big impact on how successful they are in education, within society. And it's been proven time and time again in statistical evidence. There is a huge link between children in out-of-home care and incarceration rates.
There are, I think the Aboriginal population in WA is 5%. But over 40% of men and women in prison in Western Australia are Aboriginal. Over 70% of young people in detentions, not migrant detention, but incarceration detention, over 70% of those are Aboriginal.
We still do not have enough people representing the families before the children are apprehended, or at the point when they have been apprehended and they go to court.
If you look up the line, the grandparents are more than likely to be taken away themselves or grown up in missions where they weren't hugged and kissed and loved. They were just growing up. And then the next generation down, they're not able to do it to their parents because they love their kids, but they just don't know how to show love.
They view Aboriginality as optional for a lot of Aboriginal children, that it's something they can learn when they grow up or they leave their care. And that to me is actually a very damaging thing to do, because it makes them feel that that part of who they are is just perpetuating the same notions of the stolen generation.
I see that Kinship Connections has a really important future in contributing towards the enhancement of the families and the kids who are currently in care in Western Australia.
I really haven't come across an Aboriginal person yet who hasn't been through a lot in their life and have sprung out the other end and have a good sense of humour. And that's what I love about Aboriginal people, is they can have the darkest days and the coldest nights, but they've really got a good humour. And it's really about connecting and finding something to connect with them.
Gone by over time. Gone by.
You hear? Cheers, mate.